the reason why I built this webinar was because I wanted to illustrate how I use black and white. Now, I'm not, black and white photography for me, I'm relatively new to it in terms of my digital lifespan as a photographer. I developed, I shot black and white when I first got into photography around 1997, and I learned how to develop it, but it's been so long since my hands have touched chemicals, that, and I spent so much time kind of really ensconced in HDR photography for so many years that black and white never really fit into my my arsenal, my little tool kit. I started the year off 2011, that was, not 2012, 2011, trying to go in a new direction and exploring more of black and white photography. And I learned that black and white photography, it definitely has clinical uses when you're working on images. And for this particular image, I have kind of 4 different examples. I got some funny people in the questions module. This is an infrared image, and for those of you that may not know this little fact about me, I'm an idiot. I am what we call dim-witted, because I converted my Canon 40D to infrared, except apparently there were 3 different filter densities. So when you convert your camera to infrared, it's pretty permanent. You send your camera out to some shop, and the shop applies an infrared filter directly over the sensor. And this is great because, as opposed to getting an infrared filter that you put on the front of your lens, you can actually use any lens with it. So, if you have a filter, you have to have the proper threading for it. Also, if you have the filter on the front of the lens, you won't see anything through it. So, whereas if you have the filter on the sensor, you can actually use the live view. I didn't use LifePixel, Michael. I'll give you the link for the house. This was when I was still on the East Coast, and I used I went through Digital Silver Imaging is the vendor, and then they outsource it to some little shop in Connecticut. Now, the reason why I said I'm an idiot is because there are apparently three different filters that you can apply, or 3 different densities. And I'm red-green colorblind, so I can't really see any shade of red. And when I didn't realize, I remember reading the description, and it said the particular density I chose was great because it allows a minimal amount of actual visible color through. And I didn't understand what that meant. I just thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I went with that, and so I went out and I went shooting, and this was taken in Red Rock Canyon last year. I brought my 5D for my regular shots and my 40D infrared for this, and so everyone's saying, yeah, this is a really red image. And that was the thing, I remember processing this image. I had no idea it was red, and I put it out there on my blog, and I remember the comments. People were like, this is atrocious. And so I didn't understand it, and so I talked to some people, and they explained what was going on, and I was like, oh, wow, that kind of sucks. So now what I do, I don't really use it too often anymore. In fact, I'm waiting for probably the 5D Mark III to come out. The rumors that it's going to come out in March, and I'm going to convert my 5D Mark II. And that's John, a buddy of mine who's a frequent webinar attendee, he's saying it looks like it was taken on Mars. That's actually exactly what I got when I took this shot, when I composed it. That's why I composed it like this, because of the vast sky, and then you can see the moon a little bit right over here. And I'm going to bring that out, and then just kind of the way you have these 2 little cacti, or cactuses, or whatever the proper plural is, standing here. They look like little like aliens. So with that, I kind of was like, all right, well, I'll just use it the best I can, and to tie everything back to black and white. So I kind of was saying how I'm waiting for the 5D Mark III to come out. I'll convert the 5D Mark II to kind of a proper black and infrared, where it's that really, really high contrast, very creamy black and white. And the reason for that is it really adds, it does certain things to your image depending on the kind of mood you're trying to evoke. out of your viewer. So let's work on this image here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to my develop setting because I have into my spot healing, because there's a little dot over here that's driving me crazy. There, got rid of that dust spot. All right, but I'm going to actually send this over to the Perfect Photo Suite from Lightroom, and so I can do that by going to File, plug in Extras, and then go into the Perfect Photo Suite. And this is something that I found I was doing with all of my shots that I took with this 40D, because I was getting the same result, and it's not really doing anything for me, especially because I can't even tell what I'm looking at for the color. So for someone who's colorblind, black and white's actually a nice little treat, because I don't ever have to worry about color so much as tonality. And so we're going to send this to Perfect Effects, and I'm going to start playing around with black and white effects. With Perfect Effects, you've got this black and white category. It's the first category that opens up in the product, and we've got our effects here. And so these are great just if you're looking for a quick idea of what to do, and I do this a lot. I don't know how many people ever really scroll over to see the other black and white effects that we have here, but there are some really good ones here that incorporate color tone to them. So like this warm gray violet, it gives me a good idea of a starting point, you know, where to go. Now, I don't really like to use presets for black and white too often, so I'm going to hide the effects bar, and I'll show you why. If you're new to Perfect Effects, you're going to be in this basic mode on the top right over here. And in basic mode, you can see this is all you have for controls. But if I press Advanced, all of a sudden you have this new palette called Effect Options. And the Effect Options has all of our building blocks. These are the same building blocks that Dan used to build all of the effects in Perfect Effects. So you have the same exact controls that we do. And so the first one is black and white. So if I click on it, we have controls here for black and white. And so now it's time to have some fun. The first thing really that I'll attack is the contrast. And for this shot, I really want it to be contrasty. The reason for that is because it brings out the moon a little bit, and it also brings out the separation of the clouds against the sky. Now, you can see that there's a and cacti is the plural. Thanks, Susan. I'm glad. So cacti is the plural of cactus. You can see that there's an interesting color tint here. Now, the first thing you'll do is you can adjust the color filter. And if you go back to our black and white session that we had earlier this month, Dan kind of talked about the virtues of using the color filter, how it exposes for certain colors within the scene. So here I'm just kind of going through it. I'm looking for a nice happy medium that exposes, and something right around this part of the color spectrum works for me. Now, back to color. This is the visible color spectrum, the Roy G. Biv. It's ultimately it's fairly useless to me, because for me, I can only see within this range right here of color, usually around the yellows through the blues. I can't really, and I can see some oranges, but I can't see any red. I can't see violet, and so I don't really pay attention to those areas there. But you still have to work. So I'm basically processing to what looks good to me. Oh, it is a yucca. Thank you. Thank you, James. James is right. This is a Mojave yucca. It's not a cactus. It's a yucca plant. And I actually have some shots of it. See, this is why I love having you guys here, because it makes me smarter calling me out on these things, and I love the interactivity. So James, you get a gold star. So let's go ahead now. Let's continue working. We got the color filter here because what I want to do is I'm again exposing for the overall scene here, and then we can add a toner. So the toner, if you hover over these options, you can see it kind of gives you a preview of what the toner will look like. And here's the great thing about it. So if you want kind of a sepia tone, you can do that, or you can go to custom. Custom's kind of fun because you can actually choose a color that's not in the drop-down. Now here by default, don't get thrown off by this. If you're on a Mac, for instance, the color picker by default here, the color wheel is black, so you don't see anything but black. what you'll want to do is drag that all the way up to white, and then you'll get access to the full color spectrum. And so just click on an area here to get an idea of what color you want to use. So here, something like a blue might be nice. And what it does is it kind of adds a nice tint to the image. The great thing also is that you can adjust the strength of that. So if you want it to be stronger, you can get that there. Now, here's what I'm going to do though is I want two different tints. I'm going to start with kind of a sepia tint for the foreground, bring the strength up a little bit, and then I'm going to use the masking bug to mask out the entire sky. I don't want this here. And so you can see what I'm doing. Again, just to illustrate it more, there's that sepia tint. I'm just bringing up the strength so you can see it. Let me drop that down. And let me bring the feather down of the mask. So if I bring up my inspector, the feather essentially controls the transition. So if we show the mask here, what it's doing is it's making the effect, either the transition either more gradual or less gradual. Okay, let me actually hide that mask because I don't want the mask to distract from the image. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer here, and I'm going to go back to my black and white. And again, same thing, I'm going to bring the contrast up and the color filter. And I'm going to add another tone, except this time it's going to be more of a bluish tone to the image here. And just like before, I'm going to add a masking bug. And this time, I'm going to put it kind of down here on the foreground. Oops. Trying to. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to fill this top part here using a masking brush. The masking brush is going to allow me to kind of complement the area that the masking bug couldn't touch. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to, I don't want the masking bug to bleed into the sky. And so I'm doing this kind of quickly. Here, actually I forgot that I have my little Wacom controls now. So here, drawing on this, and kind of see what I'm doing is I'm cross-processing two different parts of the image. I've got processing for the foreground first, and then I've got processing for the sky on two different effect layers using black and white effects. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to go to the color and tone category. And the reason I'm going to that is because I want to add some tonal contrast. Now, excuse me, tonal contrast will ruin your image really quickly if you have it set to 100%. Tonal contrast is really nice when you want to bring out some texture. Now, the first thing I'll do here is I'm going to drop the strength down of that tonal contrast. Now, really, all I want is tonal contrast in the sky. I don't really want the tonal contrast in the ground. And so, again, just like before, this time I'm just going to use a masking brush, and I'm going to paint that out of the foreground. And I don't even care if I get into the sky over here, because I like the transition that it gives me. But it does a really nice job of bringing out the moon. And so what we're doing is we're trying to get this kind of a Martian type of feel. And then the last thing here, we'll go to Add, and then I'm going to go to the Vignette category here. Drop the brightness down. Actually, you know what? I think there were some cool vignette presets here that have textures. Something like Grunge Vignette Light. Yeah, this was one of them. And what I do is I drop the opacity. No, this was not it, because I didn't like what it did to this top left corner. I was actually playing with one earlier today. The soft edges, I think it was. No, I can't remember what it was. So in that case here, I'm just going to build my own. Drop the brightness down, drop the midpoint down. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker here. Now, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring the attention over here to to these two little yucca plants. So, ooh, looks like there was sound. I just saw here that there's no sound. So can you guys hear me? All right. I don't know what happened. Maybe there was a weird drop. All right, good. Thank you very much. So basically, for those that missed it, let's just walk through them. The first thing I did was I added a black and white effect to add kind of the sepia tone to the foreground, and then I added another black and white effect to change the processing of the sky. Tonal contrast was added to add texture to the sky, and it primarily did that to bring out the moon. And then finally, we added a vignette to kind of darken the edges a little bit. And so when I hit apply, I'm able to return it back to perfect layers. And then I'll hit save. So that was the first kind of example of how you'd use black and white. If I drop here, the effect, the image appears right there. That's how you would use black and white processing, in my opinion, to really kind of kick up an image. Now, this image can stand to have some more processing in Lightroom. Here, I might add a little bit more contrast and a little bit of clarity. And then if we scroll down to the post-crop vignette, I'm not a big fan of post-crop vignette, but I want to supplement this. Or supplement the vignetting that we had in Perfect Effects. And then I might adjust the highlights. I'm going to drop the highlights down a bit and drop the darkness because I want to make it a little bit darker. So for those of you that may not know, in Lightroom there's a keyboard shortcut. It's the / key. It's right above the enter or return key on your keyboard, and it does it before and after. And what I found actually is I can see there are 2 dust spots right in the middle here, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. Let's move them around so they blend a little bit better. All right, that's better. So that's one example. You can see the before and the after. So one more time, before and after, kind of how you're able to use black and white. All right, let's move on to this image here. So this is going to be a pretty straightforward black and white. And the reason why I chose this image was because I felt that when I remember working on this image, and it's another image I posted on my blog a while ago. The image didn't really come to life, for me at least, until I applied a black and white processing technique, because it just something about the removal of all these different colors, however minute they are. Once I removed it, I got this really sense of cold chill. I love that the ice is jagged like this. It was just my 70-200 lens. I was driving around, I think this was in Worcester, Massachusetts. Just some random farm I stumbled upon, and I just loved. Oh, I remember what it was. There was a rumor that there was some abandoned building somewhere in Worcester, and I was looking for it, and I couldn't find it. And but I did find this nice little farm here, so that was kind of cool. So let's go ahead now and send this over to the suite here. And once again, we're going to go to Perfect Effects. So I'll show you what I would do here. In this kind of shot here, I would actually use an effect here like Dawn Treader. I'm looking for something that gives me a really, really heavy contrast look, and without any color. Actually, Casablanca could be good too. So we've got this shot here, Casablanca, and it's pretty quick and dirty. Now what I want to do is I'm going to hit apply, and hit save. So now, there's the image in Lightroom. I'm going to send it to Photoshop. And the reason why I'm going to send it to Photoshop is because I really enjoy the adjustment layer control that I have here. So here's the image. Now on the right here under the adjustments palette, so if you don't have the adjustments palette up, you should, because it's a default. I think it's a default panel, but if you don't, just go to Window and then Adjustments, and it'll bring up the adjustments palette. If I bring what I want to do is I want to play around with the levels. So watch this. If I click on levels, I have now a control for the levels, and what I want to do is bring the white point up. So you see what I'm doing here? How it's adding almost kind of like that minimalistic look. I'm essentially blowing out highlights, which I'm okay with, and I'm also going to adjust it with the midpoint as well. So these are the white point, the black point in the middle is your kind of midpoint for the midtones. And so I'm just blowing out a lot of that detail here. Now to get really kind of minimalistic, you can also bring the blacks in. So you see what we're doing? Watch, let me turn the layer off. You see how this is kind of flat over here? I'm going for a much heavier contrast look. And what it's doing is it's really evoking a feeling of harsh, cold weather. That's the whole point. That's how I want to use my black and white. I'm seeing here, do me a favor everyone, I'm seeing a few people again saying that sound is out. So can you confirm, just give me a yes or no for the most part, and I want to see if sound is here. Alright, for the most part sound is good. If you have issues with sound, drop out of the webinar and try coming back in. Yeah, Sarah was saying she had to drop out of the webinar and come back in. So let's do that for those of you that are having sound issues. But I apologize. Again, webinars are very bandwidth heavy. And so sometimes I don't know what's happening, but I actually have a call tomorrow at 10 a.m. with our Citrix rep. So I will be happy to bring this up. So okay, so do you see what I'm getting at? You know, you guys kind of confirm with sound, but does this make sense to you? What we're doing here, in terms of using black and white to get a certain look. Now you can use Perfect Effects for black and white. You can use Silver Effects by Nick for black and white. Silver Effects is one of the most amazing products that like niche products I've ever used. Because of how strong it is for black and white. The reason why I like using Perfect Effects for black and white is because I love the integration. So I can go straight from effects to focal point or to photo frame if I need to. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try adjusting my mic too. Maybe that's a problem too. All right, so just to recap what we did with the tone, I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to return it back to Lightroom. And so you can see now that we're in Lightroom, here are 3 versions. Actually, let me put this there. Here's our original, and nothing is, there's no substitute for getting a shot, you know, a good shot. And so in retrospect, what I should have done here is if I go to the develop module, and this I'm just kind of speaking out loud, I should have done this because there's no room for me to crop. Actually, you know what we should have done was, this probably won't work as well. Actually, that worked really nicely. I didn't like that branch sticking out. And you'll see it in the other versions, but what we're going to do is just kind of clean up the edge of the area here. Make that a little bit larger. Okay, so by cleaning up those edges, you can see how we don't have that distraction that we do here. To me, that was sloppy of me to leave that in there, but we went to Perfect Effect, or we went to Perfect Effects. And we used the Perfect Effects black and white effect, to get a good starting point. And then we brought it into Photoshop to really kind of bring out that harsh, heavy contrast that really, in my opinion, accentuates. This gives it a very, almost like a, this reminds me of a Frank Miller kind of Sin City, very graphic look. I like that. I think it accentuates these tendrils, these icicle tendrils. Yeah, Mark brings up, I like what Mark said. Mark said that it looks like melting silver or chrome. Absolutely. By adding this high contrast, you add a metallic quality, especially, and you guys can agree with me or disagree, but right up here. There's this like really, it looks almost like a thermometer. And so I really like it. Yeah, Jane said the same thing. It looks like Quicksilver. John's asking, he sees that I'm using Photoshop Extended, and what are the advantages? One, the advantage is that it was given, I was working it on one, I get licenses for this stuff, so I got Photoshop Extended, but I also believe that with Photoshop Extended, you get additional 3D tools. Video. So, what's that?
Video, 3D.
I've actually got Nicole Young in the studio with me, and so Nicole's actually an NAPP help desk guru. She says that there are added controls for video and 3D.
Miscellaneous tools in there that are hard to spot.
Yeah. So, so with that, that's what just to kind of segue for CS5 Extended. Let's move on here. Let's actually do an HDR image. I want to tone map this image here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do using two different products. So let's just scroll through the brackets. Again, so in this image here, we converted to black and white and then added some color, a color toner because of my shortcomings with color visibility. So I kind of rely on taking my infrared shots and changing them to black and white. In this shot, we converted to black and white to evoke a specific mood, this kind of really cold, icy mood. In this shot, we're going to convert to black and white because when you have a scene where where the color just sucks, get rid of it. In this shot, I love the colors in the rust, but I cannot stand, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's dirty snow. It just sucks out the life of an image for me. I hate this dirty snow, but I really did love this train track. I loved how the train track curves over here. I love how you have all these leading lines. But really, I couldn't stand that. So here's what we're going to do first. First thing I'm going to do is go to the crop mode, and I'm going to tighten this up. I'm going to essentially get rid of, actually forget the tower there. I'm going to get rid of the wire, and let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks, I'm willing to deal with this for now. And then so what you'll want to be sure of with HDR is that your image matches all the other ones. So there's our crop. Here's our crop image right there in the grid. I'm going to hit Command A or Control A to select all the images. And then I'm going to click on Sync Settings down here. And what this will allow me to do is it'll allow me to sync, in this case here, I'm just going to specify the crop. This will make sure that all of my images look exactly the same. So let's go and walk through the brackets. We got the dark bracket kind of exposing through. There we go. I'm going to send these images, all of them, to Photomatics just to tone map. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I want to bring out some of the tonality. So sending the images through. Oh man, do I love this new iMac. It's so fast. All right, here we go. Let's get rid of this thumbnail bar. Actually, you know what? I keep forgetting to turn this off in the preferences. If we go to the preferences, we can kind of turn off that presets thumbnails panel. Okay, fit the screen again. Right off the bat, the default settings here look pretty good. You can see how we have just kind of a more of a full tonal range here. We don't need to do much else. I'm going to bring up the luminosity a tiny bit and the white point just a bit. Good. So this looks pretty good. Let's save it. Let's re-import it. And then what I typically like to do is do a comparison between one of the original images and the tone map, so we can see the benefits of HDR. So look over here. We kind of, in the original image, we don't have any of the original color of the sky. So we've restored some of the color of that sky right there. But also, see all the detail in the snow that we lost here? And also the detail in the shadows of these drums. We've lost them, but we were able to gain them. If we zoom in, we were able to gain that information. So it's something to consider when you're tone mapping. And I think you'll agree if we look at the before and the after. If we're looking at the HDR image, I see nothing wrong with this technically in terms of. A lot of times people hate HDR because colors are oversaturated or the tone mapping is too harsh. But I would say that these two are pretty comparable for a realistic look. But now it's time to let's drop out of lights out mode. Wait, Glenn's asking if I ever use a light meter. I actually have a light meter, and actually, coincidentally, just put it on for sale a couple weeks ago. A Sekonic 758 spot light meter. I don't really use it anymore. I used it more when I was doing more studio work and using strobes. I don't really use studio lights or flashes anymore. And so for me, I don't need a meter. The meter in the camera, for me, is satisfactory. So let's go ahead and let's actually start stylizing this image. We're going to take the tone mapped HDR image and we're going to send it over to the suite and then right to effects. And then, just like before, I'm not going to use any pre-built effects. I'm going to build my own black and white effect. So we essentially adjust contrast accordingly. Get it nice and contrast. I see dust spots that are coming through that I'm going to have to clean. And then I'll usually start the color filters from the right, or from the left rather, and start edging it through. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at how it's affecting, the color filters affecting the drums as well as the snow. So essentially find a color filter that's you're happy with. Something right around here I'm happy with. Yeah, that's looking good. Now, whether or not you want to use a toner is up to you. For me, if I did want to add a toner, I might do something. I'll go to the custom just to see just the faintest blue. Something like that. If I like what I see here, I kind of like this, what it's doing. It's adding kind of a cool feel to the image. And again, the reason why I'm doing black and white is because I couldn't stand the color of the dirt. I don't mind the tone of the dirt. I don't mind that the snow here is darker. What I can't stand is that there's some brown and some yellow and some grossness. So I'm essentially removing that with black and white conversion. Now what I also want to do is I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and hit add, and I'm going to build my own tonal contrast effect by going to the tone enhancer and bring up the local contrast a bit, bring up the clarity a bit, and then drop the strength down. Because what this is doing is it's adding texture to the image. And then don't forget though, you probably want to remove texture from the sky. So I'm going to paint that tonal contrast out. With that done, I'm going to just hit blur right from effects. If you're in any module and you click on any other module from the bar, it's going to save your work and send you right to that module. So I'm going to hit blur, and from that, effects will save the state and bring me into focal point. So I essentially reset focal point to its default settings. You can see what I'm doing is I'm just positioning the cursor of my bug, or the bug itself, the body of the bug, wherever I want to keep focus. By default, the bug is circular, and I really want it to be more of a planar shape. So on the top right here, I'm going to change the shape from round to planar, and kind of what I'm here. Here's what I'm doing. You'll start to see kind of what I'm getting at here in a minute. I really want the focus to be more around the center of the frame, and here is the key. And I said this in yesterday's webinar, and I'll say this in every webinar. Focal point is best used in small moderations, and specifically the amount slider. You really don't want that more than 10%. You just want kind of here at about 6% is good. Because you can see what it's doing. It's kind of giving you this almost a tilt shift look, like you kind of shot where your plane of focus is right here. I'm also going to tilt the lens by putting the cursor, or not to tilt the lens, but tilt the plane of focus. You put the cursor in the body of the bug. You know the cursor's in the body of the bug when you see that little black bar appear. And then you press the Option key in the Mac or the Alt key in a PC, and you can drag up or down. So I'm going to drag downward a bit. Not too much, just like that. And what it does is it kind of changes the directionality of the blur. So it gives it a tilt shift look. Now, this is important. This is really important. You really want to be cognizant of your plane of focus. So my plane of focus is right here. If you could see the cursor, it's just this like strip in the middle. Notice how this barrel is out of focus. The bottom part's in focus, but the top part's out of focus. That doesn't make visual sense. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to take your focus brush, make sure that your opacity is pretty strong, and make sure you set the paint focus, and then just kind of draw focus in this barrel, or on this barrel rather. That way you kind of, what it helps do is, what this helps to do is it gives the image a three-dimensional effect, because you have in focus and then out of focus right behind it. It's actually, when you do it effectively, when you use that masking brush effectively, it's really, really pretty. The same thing can be said right here with this little wire. We kind of want to bring that in focus. And also some of the snow, because it's on the same plane of focus as the rest of the image. So getting the concept of plane of focus is important. And you see, if we zoom in, I kind of brought that wall right over here in focus. I don't want that, so I'm going to switch to blur, bring the opacity of my brush down, and just kind of bring that in blur. There we go. Now, one more time, we kind of have a few things we need to fix, but right here we need that to be in focus. Oops, I'm in erase mode. I need to be in focus. So there we go. So we've essentially created our plane of focus. And to me, it's a lot. If I hit apply, we'll return back to perfect layers. Let's hit save, and you can just see the before and the after. Where'd it go? There it is. So let's compare these two images. So to me, this one is a lot more effective than this one. This looks a lot more stark, a lot moodier than this one does. We use the tone mapping, the HDR processing, to bring out the tone of the image, which is great, but the color does nothing for me here. If you want, and I'm not a fan of this, but I'll show you this, you could do this. We can take these two images, select them, go to File, Plug in Extras, send them to the Perfect Photo Suite. You could do this. Depending on who you talk to, they might spit in your face, or they might say, oh, that's kind of cool. Wait a second, why did we have two of the black and white? So let me close out and make sure I have selected the same images. Let's take this one and that one. Send them over. And then what I'm talking about is selective color. So here we have our black and white layer on top, our color layer on the bottom, and you could use a masking brush, bring down the opacity. I'm not a big fan of this totally, really, really low, and then bring back some of that. I don't know if this translates well on the webinar, but you can bring back some of that original stain of the barrels, because I really did love the color of the barrels. Because we're at such a low opacity, you know, a few brush strokes can control that bleed. And so here we can save it. And so it's really up to you. Like, now we can compare the original black and white with this one. So, show of hands, I see Dave and Steve enjoy this look. What do you guys think? You like the rust coming through? So this is interesting. Oh wait, not really. Okay, so who do we have? We've got Cinda and Harris. Don't care for it, but without a doubt, the majority of the people are digging this. Yeah, selective color is one of those things. It depends. I know a lot of Lori Nordstrom. She's kind of a child and senior photographer, baby photographer, and that's her thing. Is she loves bringing in the most subtle amount of color in her black and white images, and I think it has a place here. In all honesty, I'm actually kind of liking this version. And I'll tell you why a lot of people don't like it. It's because it's tacky, and a lot of times it's done poorly. And let's really quickly. I can illustrate that. What I would say is poorly done. Let's drop out of the lights out view and drop out of the compare. Let's take again. We'll take the color, our finalized color, and one of our black and whites, and let's send it over to the suite. And so here's where I think selective color fails. What happens a lot of times is it simply is this. You bring your masking brush, you have your brush opacity at 100%, and you just bring that color. And to me, this is tacky. This is very, very tacky. And again, it's opinion. Our photography, one of the beautiful things about photography is that it's 100% subjective. There is no right or wrong. But to me, it's like, wow, it's just tacky. However, if we reset the mask and we drop that opacity down, and who was it that just, Thomas asked to bring some of the color into the track back, that actually kind of could work a tiny bit. Just the slightest amount of color, and then the slightest amount of color in the, from the patina on the barrels, that actually works. So I guess never say never, but also everything in moderation, because it can be hit or miss. You'll see a lot of the those wedding shots where the bride is holding her bouquet, and it's a black and white shot, but then they just they blast in the color of the flowers, or even worse, they have the whole image black and white and they just bring the color of the eyes through. And to me, that's just, you're better than that. Oh, I like that. I like Terry. That's great. Terry wrote 10 people in a meeting, 12 opinions. That's so true. I had a fourth image, but I want to save that. I've been finding that usually I'll get through 3 images in a webinar. Thomas, that was a good call on the tracks. I like that. These are the 2 images, the comparisons. So what we did here is we brought a little bit of the track color back in. And it's a nice moody shot. This is actually a very moody shot in black and white. So when you're going for that angst look, that works. What was my 4th shot? Seattle. We can do this pretty quickly. Let's actually send this just to Photoshop. So I'm not going to use Perfect Effects here. I'm just going to use Photoshop. And we can do this in 2 steps. If Vincent Versace was watching, he'd smack me because he hates when people do this. But you can go to the saturation layer and essentially just drop the saturation. This is not black and white. That's what he would say. But now what I can do is I can go ahead and repeat the process of adding another color level. You see how I have all the space here for my for the white space? I'm just going to bring that over until it reaches the end of the tone. I'm also going to adjust my midpoint. My black level here. Actually, what I'll do here is this. I'm going to do 2 separate layers for the levels. I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to add another one, and right here, and I'm going to adjust for the for the city. Now watch what I mean here. With this, I'm going to go to my mask. Where is it? Here we go. Let me delete that for a second. Oops, I don't want to do that. Option, where's my option key? There it is. All right, and now what I'm going to do is just use a brush. Whoa, wrong thing there. There we go. What just happened? What happened to my image? There we go. That's weird. How is that the original size of my image? I'm having some issues, some technical difficulties, everyone. Let me delete that layer. There we go. I created a vector mask. That was the problem. Delete that right there. We'll do it different way. What I can do here is create a dodge and burn layer. So I'm going to create a new layer with overlay, and you want to select this checkbox here. So I create a new layer. I selected overlay as my blending mode, and you want to select fill with 50% gray. And what you can do here is with a brush set to black, I'm going to set my opacity to about 15%, and I can kind of darken this area here. And so you kind of can do this. I'm not going to spend too much time, but I want to bring out some of that skyline. And here, let me, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. X that and drop that down to about there and brighten that right there. So you can see what we're doing is we use the saturation adjustment layer here to get rid of the color, but then we added this levels adjustment, and I like what it does to bring out the white point. It kind of gives you a nice I don't know what the mood is that it's evoking, but with the dodge and burn layer is great because you can kind of control areas that you want to be darker using it. Oh, I'm actually masking out now. So, yeah, that was the problem, Ron. There was a question, what's the HDR software called? It's I'll put the website, the company's website. It's called Photomatix, hdrsoft.com. So in the chat module, I put the website there. And then can you zap the blurred ship on the right? I wouldn't want to, Greg. I actually like that, the blurred ship. I worry, what I would, if anything, I might use content aware fill on this over there and see what that does. Oh, wrong layer. Let's just do this. Okay, now let's shift delete. So that did a pretty good job there. I would have to clean up this area here if I had more time. But I like the ship there. I think it adds a character to the shot, and I love the little bird here. So it's up to you. This would be kind of difficult to get rid of. You could crop the image even tighter. You know, something like use the marquee tool and just kind of get something like that. And you could do something like that, but I don't like how the pole compositionally is right kind of in the center of the, almost in the center of the frame. It's in the upper third of the frame when you're looking in the rows, but it's kind of in the middle here. Doesn't do much for me. I like that there's a foreground element to anchor the image. I would prefer actually, this could be interesting. Let's try this. Let's select this. This will probably blow up in my face, but move this here. I'd have to select this. Let me do this. Let me undo that. Let me use a quick select brush. Select that. Copy paste. Move that here. And then go to this layer. Select all that. Content aware it. So I like that. I could probably just do something like this on this. Let me merge all these layers together really quickly. And then I could probably use a clone stamp and just kind of, oops. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating I'd have to create a natural form, so it's not a hard edge. Something like that. And I'd play around with that and fix this or blend it better. But the reason why I did that, just to kind of walk you through, is because now you have from the bottom right to the top left, you have this a visual line, whereas when the rock here was on the left, there was nothing over here. It didn't do much for me. So kind of see really quickly what you can do. Oh, flip the rock. Yeah, there. Totally good call. I totally forgot about that. You kind of transform that. And we can just rotate 180 degrees. Wait, 180 degrees? Yeah, that should work. Let me hide that. Not 180 degrees. That's what I forgot. We want to do it. Edit, transform, and then flip horizontal. There. So that kind of works. But in this case, I actually would probably move it over like that, because I don't like this drop. So I'd kind of move that there. And then continue on. But do you see what I mean? How you kind of, as opposed to having it like that. That's kind of cool. Ooh. But yeah, so that's kind of, let's turn that off. So just to reiterate, this would work. So this shot here would work, in my opinion, like this. More of a vertical orientation. That works great. We'd rotate for the horizon, and that would work nicely. But if you're going with the landscape horizontal view, I think that works nicely, because you kind of have opposing elements, opposing anchors. So that was kind of fun. A little deviation from the script, but that's kind of a small kind of look at how I look at the image. I have absolutely no qualms. I'm not an editorial photographer. I don't care about preserving the authenticity of the scene. What I care about is creating compelling, kind of artistic shots. And so, again, something as simple as, swapping the rock around works. And again, we'd have to fix this, but man, hats off to Adobe for acquiring that content aware technology. That was a really great move on their part.